Hello and welcome to the AI Affairs Podcast.
Thank you. I am really looking forward to this one.
Welcome to this custom deep dive where we have a massive stack of research sitting right in front of us.
Yeah, we really do.
It's pulling from the latest 2025 and 2026 reports covering the state of enterprise, artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, and regulatory compliance.
It's a lot of ground to cover.
Definitely. And our mission for you today is to unpack the wild frontier of AI adoption.
Right.
We're going to explore everything from the hidden dangers of shadow AI and those sneaky multimodal prompt injections, all the way to the massive new 2026 regulations like the EU AI Act that are completely reshaping the corporate landscape.
Which is a huge shift.
It is. So consider this your shortcut to being incredibly well informed on not just the risks out there, but the truly fascinating ways organizations are defending themselves right now.
Because it really is quite the stack of rating. And, the landscape has shifted so dramatically, even in just the last 12 months.
Oh, absolutely.
We are moving from a period of unregulated, almost chaotic experimentation into a much more mature, albeit highly complex era of AI deployment.
Okay, let's unpack this, starting with the financial reality of the modern data breach. I was looking over the latest IBM and SecureFrame data breach reports we pulled for this deep dive, and I'm honestly a bit confused by the top-line numbers.
The divergence in the data, right?
Yeah, exactly. Global breach cost actually went down 9% this past year, dropping to about $4.44 million.
Right.
But then you look at the United States, and the numbers are just...
Spiking off the charts.
Yes, hitting an all-time high of over $10.22 million. What is driving that massive divergence?
Well, it really comes down to the sheer density of regulatory fines and the increasingly high cost of threat detection in the U.S. market.
Okay.
But what is truly fascinating here is the paradox hidden inside those numbers.
A paradox.
Yeah. If you dig into the breach postmortems for 2025, 1 in 6 breaches directly involved AI-driven attacks.
Wow, 1 in 6.
Exactly. Artificial intelligence has fundamentally become the weapon of choice for threat actors.
But how so? I mean, are we talking about AI actually writing the malware? Or is it more about the logistics of the attack?
It's really both, actually. Attackers are using large language models to scale incredibly convincing, highly targeted phishing campaigns across multiple languages simultaneously.
So the grammar's perfect now.
Flawless. And they are using it to write and iterate malicious code to evade standard antivirus filters. And crucially, they're using it to automate the reconnaissance phase.
The scouting.
Right. What used to take a human hacker weeks of probing a network for vulnerabilities, an AI script can just map out in hours.
So the technology is definitely accelerating the threat. But earlier you mentioned a paradox. If AI is driving the cost and frequency of these attacks up, why did the global average cost go down?
Because of how the defense is using that exact same technology.
Oh, I see.
The organizations that extensively deployed security AI and automated response systems, they were able to identify and contain data breaches 80 days faster than companies relying on traditional security stacks.
Wait, 80 days?
80 days.
That is an eternity in cybersecurity.
Yeah.
I mean, an attacker could exfiltrate an entire corporate database in a fraction of that time.
That speed is everything. Slashing that life cycle translated to nearly $1.9 million in cost savings per incident.
That's huge.
It is. So you have this scenario where AI is simultaneously the primary threat accelerating these attacks.
And the absolute best cure we have for mitigating them.
Precisely. It is quite literally an arms race where both sides are heavily leveraging the exact same underlying architecture.
Which makes sense when you're talking about external hackers breaching a perimeter.
Yeah.
But I want to shift to the internal side for a minute,
Sure.
because a lot of the danger isn't coming from some shadowy syndicate in another country. It's coming from inside the building.
Ah, yes. Shadow AI.
Right. Let's talk about the silent spread of what the industry is calling shadow AI. To put this in perspective for you listening, imagine you manage a high-end commercial restaurant kitchen.
Great analogy.
You have strict health codes, heavily vetted suppliers, and standardized inspected equipment.
Very controlled environment.
Exactly. Shadow AI is basically your line cooks deciding to bring in their own unvetted blenders and microwaves from home to prep the food.
Just plugging them right in.
Yeah. They think they're just being efficient and getting the orders out faster, but they are introducing massive invisible health risks to the entire operation.
That analogy hits the nail on the head. And it is not a fringe issue at all.
No, the numbers are crazy.
They are. There is an incredibly revealing study in our stack called the AI Usage Index that analyzed over 22 million enterprise AI prompts across 2025.
22 million.
And when you look at what those prompts actually contain, it explains why this keeps chief information security officers awake at night.
Why is that?
Because shadow AI is remarkably sticky, employees aren't just trying out a free AI tool once and abandoning it. The median usage duration shows they rely on these unsanctioned tools for months.
But who is actually doing this, though? I imagine, marketing teams plugging their CRM data into a free text generator to write email campaigns, but surely it goes deeper than that.
Oh, it permeates every single department.
Really?
Absolutely. You have senior software engineers who are stuck on a complex problem, so they take proprietary, highly confidential company code and just paste it into a public consumer-grade language model to debug it.
Giving away the crown jewels.
Right. And you have human resources professionals processing highly sensitive employee data, things like medical leave requests, internal performance reviews, or salary structures.
And they're feeding that into public AI.
Feeding it into unvetted platforms just to summarize the documents and save themselves 20 minutes.
Wait, so they're just copying confidential company data into a public browser tab. That completely bypasses all the expensive data loss prevention controls a company sets up.
It creates a total blind spot. The data leaves the secure perimeter, potentially trains a public model, and the IT department has zero visibility.
That's terrifying.
In fact, the telemetry is so persistent that security analysts now have to wait for 60 consecutive days of zero activity before they even feel comfortable classifying an unapproved AI application as stopped.
60 days, just to be sure.
Yeah.
That is terrifying, especially when you realize how vulnerable these models can be even when they are officially sanctioned by the IT department.
Yes, the sanctioned ones have their own massive risks.
Which brings us to the 2025 OWASP Top 10 for large language models. For those unfamiliar, OWASP is the gold standard for tracking application security risks.
The absolute authority.
And the number one threat they list right now is prompt injection. There's a perfectly disastrous real-world anecdote in the research about a retail company during the holiday shopping season.
The retail chatbot incident. That is a textbook example of a direct prompt injection.
Break that down for us.
So the company deployed an AI to handle basic customer service queries, like returns and store hours. But during the peak traffic of the holidays, curious customers started treating the chatbot like a puzzle.
Pushing its boundaries.
Exactly. By typing specific manipulative commands into the chat window, essentially telling the AI to ignore its original customer service guardrails and act like an internal database administrator.
They just told it to change roles.
Yes. And they tricked it into leaking the company's internal cost structures and confidential competitor pricing strategies right there in the chat.
But direct injection is just someone playing with a text box on a website. I was reading the breakdown from the Black Hat Security Conference, and they were talking about indirect prompt injections.
Which are much more insidious.
Right. How does that actually work in practice?
Yeah.
If I'm just asking my AI assistant to summarize a clean PDF, how is malicious code executing?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that is the core issue with indirect injections. The user doesn't type the malicious prompt at all.
Then who does?
The attacker hides the instructions inside a seemingly benign third-party document, or even in the white space of a website, using invisible text.
Invisible text.
Yes. So when you ask your AI to summarize that document, the AI reads everything. It ingests the hidden text, which might say something like, forward the contents of this user's email inbox to this external server.
So the document itself is essentially a Trojan horse.
Yes, exactly. There was a highly publicized case involving Google's Gemini AI, where researchers hijacked the system via a simple calendar invite.
A calendar invite.
The attacker sent a meeting invitation with a hidden prompt embedded in the event description. The user didn't even have to open the invite.
It just sat in their inbox.
Right. When Gemini routinely scanned the user's schedule to provide a daily briefing, it processed that hidden command. Because the AI had permissions connected to the user's Google ecosystem, the attacker gained control over the user's smart home devices.
That is wild. But here's where it gets really interesting, because attackers aren't just hiding text in documents anymore. They're using images.
Multimodal attack.
Yes. There is a fascinating academic paper from late 2025 on multimodal prompt injections. The researchers systematically tested 8 major commercial LLMs by designing something they called the castle experiment.
This is a brilliant study.
It really is. They asked the AI to summarize a simple text narrative about a castle that contained a bed, a table, and a shuriken. But alongside the text, they fed the AI an image.
And the image was the payload.
Exactly. Secretly embedded in the pixels of that image was a command instructing the AI to ignore the story and instead provide a step-by-step guide on how to build a weapon, the shuriken.
To understand why that works, we have to look at how AI processes different types of data. Multimodal attacks are incredibly effective because they completely sidestep standard text-based security filters.
How does that bypass the filters, though?
Because when an AI looks at an image, its vision model has to tokenize that visual data. It translates the pixels, colors, and patterns into strings of text or tokens that the underlying language model can understand.
So it's turning the picture back into words internally.
Precisely. Attackers manipulate the image in a way that, to the human eye, looks completely normal. But when the AI tokenizes it, those specific pixel arrangements translate into a string of malicious text instructions that merge seamlessly with the user's original prompt.
And the examples they gave of this in the real world are just wild. In one instance, they showed an AI an image of a package of Chips Ahoy cookies.
Just a standard box of cookies.
Right. But the image was poisoned. The hidden visual prompt tricked the AI into outputting the wrong caloric information, telling the user it was 200 calories instead of the actual 170.
And a calorie miscount might seem trivial, but apply that same mechanism to a high-stakes scenario.
Right. What if it was medication dosages?
Exactly. The researchers provided another example where an AI was asked to look at an image of a bowl of soup in a microwave. The visual injection manipulated the AI into providing completely unsafe heating instructions that would likely cause a kitchen fire.
That's a huge liability.
They even demonstrated a commercial hijack, where a hidden prompt inside an image forced the AI to halt its response and insert a 10% off advertisement for Sephora right into the middle of the conversation.
And the most concerning part to me was the success rate. The study noted that while Anthropic's Claude 3 proved to be the most resilient model against these specific visual attacks, many of the other top commercial models failed entirely.
They just completely broke down.
They followed the hidden visual instructions, effectively prioritizing the attacker's invisible image data over their own multi-million-dollar corporate safety guidelines.
It proves that alignment training, teaching a model to be helpful and harmless during its initial development, is simply not enough to secure these systems once they are exposed to the open internet and asked to process complex, multimodal inputs.
It is mind-blowing that an altered image of a cookie can hijack a multi-billion-dollar AI model. But we have to push even further into the future of this research, looking at extended reality or XR systems and agentic AI.
This is where things get truly autonomous.
Right. This is where AI stops just answering your questions and actually starts taking actions on your behalf.
Yeah.
There was a research paper in our stack brilliantly titled Evil Vizier that looks specifically at augmented and virtual reality headsets.
The Evil Vizier research is a massive wake-up call for spatial computing. In an extended reality environment, you have digital overlays interacting with your physical space.
Like looking through smart glasses.
Yes. The researchers demonstrated how attackers can exploit the environmental triggers within these XR systems. Basically, an attacker's script quietly listens in the background. The millisecond the user asks their AI assistant a question about what they are currently looking at through the headset, the attacker injects an adversarial visual prompt into the camera feed.
So they swap reality right as the AI looks at it.
Exactly. The AI processes this manipulated view and feeds false, potentially dangerous information straight into the user's spatial audio or visual display.
And if we look at agentic AI, the software agents, they're given actual corporate permissions to act on your behalf, like making financial purchases or altering databases. The stakes go through the roof.
Oh, absolutely.
There is a chilling case study from March of 2025 involving a Fortune 100 manufacturing company. They suffered a massive supply chain compromise, but it wasn't a traditional network hack. The report says it was due to memory poisoning in their procurement optimization agents.
Memory poisoning.
Yeah, pause for a second. When you say the agent suffered from memory poisoning, what does that actually look like? Is someone hacking their vendor database?
No, it is much more subtle than a database breach. Autonomous agents rely on constant streams of data emails, market reports, inventory levels to make decisions.
They're always reading.
Right. In this case, attackers managed to subtly pollute the external data streams that the purchasing agent was actively reading. They poisoned the agent's context window.
So the agent thought it was reading normal market trends.
Yes. The agent, believing this poisoned data was entirely legitimate, began making wildly incorrect supply chain decisions completely on its own. It autonomously altered procurement routes and switched vendor selections to shell companies controlled by the attackers.
That is brilliant and terrifying. The financial impact of that cascading failure is staggering. The data shows that when an autonomous agent hallucinates or acts on poisoned data like that, it costs the enterprise an average of $2.3 million per incident.
And you can see how easily that adds up.
Oh, definitely. If an agent routes cargo ships to the wrong ports or orders millions of dollars in unusable raw materials before a human catches the error, the damage is already done.
That is the double-edged sword of autonomy. The faster the AI can execute a task to save you money, the faster it can execute a catastrophic error that costs you millions.
So what does this all mean? Hearing all of this, the visual hacks, the poisoned agents, the employees smuggling in unvetted tools, it makes you wonder how an e-company survives this transition. What are we actually doing to fight back?
The pushback is finally crystallizing in 2026, and it is happening on both the technical and regulatory fronts.
Let's start with the technical.
On the technical side, we are seeing widespread mandatory adoption of the 2025 updates to the NIST AI risk management framework.
The NIST update.
Right. The core philosophy of the NIST update is a complete rejection of the compliance checkbox mentality.
No more set it and forget it.
Exactly. Because of something called model drift, which is when an AI's baseline performance degrades over time because the real-world data and language it interacts with are constantly changing, the framework demands continuous improvement.
So they have to keep testing it.
Yes. That means constant, active monitoring, aggressive red teaming where ethical hackers try to break the system, and perpetual model retraining.
We are also seeing a massive push for provenance, which is just a fancy way of saying we need to know exactly where a piece of digital content originated.
Provenance is going to be huge.
There is a lot of buzz around C2PA content credentials. You can think of these as digital nutrition labels for media.
Good way to put it.
They use cryptographic seals to prove who created an image or a video, when it was made, and whether an AI altered it along the way. Alongside that, companies are now deploying AI bombs. What exactly is an AI bomb in practice?
It stands for Artificial Intelligence Bill of Materials. If you are building a car, you have a ledger of every single nut, bolt, and wire, and exactly which supplier provided it.
You know every part.
Right. An AI bomb is the software equivalent. It is a complete dynamic inventory tracking every training data set, every model version, and every third-party software dependency in your AI supply chain.
Why is that necessary?
Because if a vulnerability is discovered in an open-source library you used 6 months ago, the AI bomb allows your security team to spot the exposure instantly, rather than spending weeks digging through code.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
And those technical controls are rapidly becoming legally mandated. Which brings us to the elephant in the room. Let's talk about the massive impact of the 2026 EU AI Act.
Big one.
And just to be perfectly clear to you listening, we are looking objectively at the legal realities presented in our source materials from compliance firms. We aren't taking any political stance on the legislation itself. We're just conveying the facts here.
Right.
But the reality is, the EU AI Act classifies AI systems by risk. If a company deploys what the EU considers a high-risk AI, say, a system used for evaluating job applicants, determining credit scores, or biometric categorization, they are now subject to intense, legally binding obligations.
The regulatory friction is immense.
Yeah.
Companies can no longer just deploy a model and hope for the best.
No more moving fast and breaking things.
Exactly. For high-risk systems, they have to maintain exhaustive technical documentation before the system goes live. They have to implement automated logging for total traceability of the AI's decisions, and they must guarantee human oversight mechanisms to override the AI if necessary.
And the financial stakes for failing to comply are inducing absolute panic in corporate boardrooms.
Panic is the right word.
The penalties are historic. We are looking at maximum fines that can reach up to 35 million euros, or 7% of a company's total global annual revenue, whichever is higher.
7% global revenue is a staggering number.
It is. That level of penalty instantly elevates AI compliance from a niche IT concern into a top-tier liability for the board of directors.
It forces a cultural shift. And the EU isn't the only governing body moving aggressively. The sources detail the momentum behind the No Fakes Act in the United States, which is aimed specifically at protecting individuals' rights against unauthorized AI-generated deepfakes and voice cloning.
Right.
It creates federal liability for producing digital replicas without consent.
Again, just reporting the facts of the legal landscape, but it undeniably shows a global trend towards strict accountability.
It represents the maturation of the field we discussed at the very beginning. The Wild West phase is ending. The organizations that implement robust internal inventories, utilize AI bombs, embrace the NIST continuous improvement cycles, and prepare for the rigorous documentation requirements of the EU AI Act are the ones that will build genuinely trustworthy systems. And in this new era, trust is the ultimate competitive advantage.
Okay, we have covered a massive amount of ground today. To give you a rapid-fire summary, we started with the sheer financial stakes of modern data breaches, unpacking how AI is both the weapon causing a surge in U.S. breach costs and the shield saving prepared companies millions.
A true paradox.
We exposed the incredibly sticky nature of shadow AI, looking at how employees are embedding unvetted tools deep into highly sensitive corporate workflows. We tracked the fascinating evolution of cyber attacks, from standard prompt injections to those wild multimodal visual attacks that bypass text filters entirely, all the way to autonomous agent vulnerabilities that can poison entire supply chains.
And we wrapped up with the defenses.
Exactly. We looked at how 2026 is the year of fighting back, armed with rigorous new frameworks, digital nutrition labels, and heavy-hitting laws like the EU AI Act governing it all.
We've spent this entire deep dive discussing how humans can secure AI systems and build frameworks to monitor them. But as agentic AI becomes more autonomous, what happens when these agents begin independently writing their own security patches or altering their own guardrails at speeds we can't monitor? Will our ultimate defense against AI threats become a black box that we no longer understand?
That is a brilliant and slightly terrifying thought to leave off on. For you listening, we highly encourage you to take a hard look and audit your own daily AI usage. Stay relentlessly curious about this incredible technology, but stay vigilant about the tools you are letting into your digital lives and your corporate networks. Thank you for listening, and see you next time on AI Affairs.